Okay, so we've looked at a bit of background to the USA, why people came there, also views towards immigration. We've also looked a bit at the Ku Klux Klan. So we're now just going to look a little bit at this policy of like isolationism and normalcy. Now, after World War One, there was a lot of bad feeling in the USA towards the war, and you basically had Woodrow Wilson, who was president at the end of World War One, running a campaign where he actually made himself extremely ill, gave himself a stroke, trying to get American support for entry into the League of Nations. So the Democrat Woodrow Wilson was running on this. People in America weren't happy about this because even though the European and British view would be, oh well, they lost just over 100,000 men in World War One, the American view would be that's 100,000 men who are our sons, our husbands, our boyfriends, our dads, etc. And this was seen as a European conflict that Americans didn't want to be involved in. So the Republican Party run on a ticket of staying out of European affairs, not being involved in the League of Nations, and it proved to be the winning ticket. The Republicans were elected in. Wilson was so ill he couldn't even stand in the election. But the League of Nations didn't happen. So you've got this idea of isolationism, right? And the idea was that it was not just to do with America staying out of foreign affairs such as wars. It also means America could limit its trade with the outside world and could also impact on immigration. And America also favoured a return to normalcy, so the way things were prior to the war. So, what happened? Well, America starts placing tariffs on foreign goods. And this is really linking in with why America boomed in the 1920s. Because there were a lot of goods such as record players, radios, new types of fashion that were coming in. It was a new type. It was just a totally different period, the 1920s. So many new inventions coming in, and there was a market for these because when there's a new invention, just like today when there's like a new iPad comes out, people want it. There was a demand. Now, America was making sure that foreign goods couldn't compete in terms of price with the similar product in the USA. So in 1922, the Fordney-McCumber tariff was brought in. A tariff is a tax, and it's named after Joseph Fordney and Porter McCumber, who were American senators, politicians. And basically what it meant was there was a tax or tariff put on any foreign goods coming into America, so people would naturally buy the American product, which would therefore be cheaper. American industry would be protected, the American good would be sold at a cheaper price. And if you think about it, if you had two white t-shirts and one of them's foreign and one of them's American, you're not going to really probably quibble about, oh well, I'll go for the more expensive one. The average person who wants a white t-shirt will buy the cheaper one. That's what people did. They bought American because it was made cheaper by this tariff. And this led to a boom in the US economy because people bought American. So because people were buying American, it meant that American businesses were being supported. It meant that money was going back to American businesses, and it meant that they continued to employ people and spend money, and that money was being spent in America and being kept in America. A problem would be that foreign governments wouldn't like this very much, understandably, and they'd start to do the same to American goods. So once your market had closed, for example, say on radios, and how many radios does somebody need? When everyone who can afford a radio has bought a radio, where do you go from there? And you made it very difficult to sell these products, American products, abroad. So the market was sort of closed, and that's a reason why America would fall into depression. You've also got this isolation links to immigration, and the changing attitudes started off before 1919. People were starting to feel more nationalistic during the war. Anyway, there was, ill will starting to be coming towards immigrants. it's similar to with the UKIP arguments what you hear today. You know, the immigrants will provide cheaper labour, they're getting American jobs. Um, Also the view that the new ideas which were coming to America at the time would affect American society badly. So communism, there was a great suspicion of what communists were. They were associated with killing the royal family in Russia, workers taking over, everyone's the same, so therefore nobody will be able to progress, they'll all just be at the same level. And this was a red scare, and it was associated with communism and anarchy in society, which was seen as chaos. So in 1917 an immigration law was passed, and it basically said that anyone who entered America had to pass an immigration test, which was a reading test. This was not an easy task to do, not as easy as you'd think, and it would stop poorer European people and poorer Asian people in particular entering, because they wouldn't be able to afford to pay for a tutor to learn English, to learn how to read in English. So it was really America trying to select what type of immigrant they would get. And if you think about it, China, Japan, etc., different alphabet. Russia, different alphabet. Put yourself in the same position when you are in year 7 and you're trying to learn French, for example. You don't just pick it up like that. So it meant that the people who were more likely to get in were people from the northern and western European countries, right? So you're going to get British, German, etc. use the same alphabet. Maybe you could afford a tutor. So they were trying to like safeguard the type of immigrant they brought in. In 1921, you get an Immigration Quota Act comes in, and it basically said that per year there will be 357,000 immigrants allowed into the United States. People who were coming in with this law in 1921, the Immigration Quota Act, could not be more than 3% of the population from that country that already was in America in 1910. So if you think about it, the 3% would be a lot more, say, British immigrants. There were a lot more British people living in America in 1910 than, say, Russian immigrants. So the 3%, which would count towards the 357,000, would mean a lot more British would be coming in than Russian, right? A lot more German would be coming in than Italian, right? A lot more Scandinavian will be coming in than Asian. So again, it's almost like wasps picking which type of immigrants they want. Now, in 1924 and 1929, you've got two more Immigration Quota Acts. The first one, just the same as the 1921 Act, but it reduces it to 2% of the population in 1890. So it's even more towards getting the likes of British and other WASP type immigrants. And in 1929 the Act has changed again, and it says that only 150,000 people per year could enter the United States, and none of these would be from Asia. So they were trying to limit the type of immigrant you would get there. What you're also seeing is the attitudes towards immigrants. Please bear in mind, they didn't have an easy existence. So a lot of immigrants would be getting the poorer jobs, the poorer paid jobs. They would end up in the ghettos, the poorer areas, and you usually, you know, like even you would find like those coming in from the poorer countries would usually end up in the poorer class of job and housing. Attitudes to immigrants was shown in the Sacco and Vanzetti case in 1921, where basically you've got a robbery took place in Massachusetts, which is in the northeast of the United States, where $15,000 was stolen and 2 staff were killed in a shoe factory. And a month later you had 2 Italian-born immigrants called Sacco and Vanzetti were arrested, and they were charged for this. They were charged for the robbery, they were charged for the murders, and there was a trial that lasted 45 days, and in July basically they were found guilty by the jury and told they were going to be put to death by the electric chair. And basically what you've got is, it's the same time period when these Immigration Quota Acts are happening. So there was a fear of the type of immigrant you were getting in America at this time, and there was a great fear in particular towards communism and also anarchists, right? which both of them tied into the Red Scare. Anarchists were associated with chaos. Now, Sacco and Vanzetti were seen as, were obviously immigrants, but they were also anarchists, so there was a fear towards them. Now, there were 61 people said they were the killers. They both did carry guns at the time, which wasn't unusual in that time. The bullets were the same in the guns as what caused the deaths, and both did act guilty by lying to the police when they were arrested. You can also see Vanzetti did have a prior conviction for an armed robbery in 1919, so it doesn't sound good. However, he had 107 people said they were elsewhere. All the eyewitnesses basically were disagreeing over what the two men were wearing. There were other confessions towards the murders, and it was said that they claimed they were carrying a loaded gun because of there was violence towards immigrants. There were threats towards immigrants, and they said it was for protection. And they also said that they lied or they didn't tell the truth because they spoke, bad English anyway. And they said they got confused when they were being questioned. And think about it yourself. If you were in an airport in a foreign country and someone was shouting at you in a foreign language, maybe you would panic because you wouldn't understand what was going on. So the argument was they were victimized as foreigners and anarchists in a time period when there was a lot of anti-immigrant feeling in the country. And the judge even said, bragged, he was a racist judge, "Did you see what I did to those bastards?" So it wasn't necessarily a fair trial. So conditions for immigrants weren't necessarily great in this time period in America, especially when you couple it with the KKK activities at the time.